Space, the final frontier, right? Well, maybe not the final frontier, but it's certainly the greatest mystery of them all. We look up at the stars and ask ourselves, where did it all come from? How was space, this massive, seemingly endless expanse of nothingness, created? Before we dive into the how, let's talk about the what. What is space? If you think space is just a big empty room, you're not entirely wrong, but it's far more complex than that. Space is a vast, almost incomprehensible vacuum that holds everything we know: galaxies, stars, planets, black holes, and yes, us, tiny humans on a tiny planet. Okay, now back to the big question: how was space created? To understand that, we have to go way, way back to the beginning. Or rather, to the moment before the beginning, the time before time existed, before space existed. Scientists believe it all started with a tiny, incredibly dense point, something so small, yet so packed with energy, we can't even properly imagine it. This is what we call the singularity. And around 13.8 billion years ago, something happened. Something we call the Big Bang. Despite its name, the Big Bang wasn't an explosion in space, it was the explosion of space. In that fraction of a second, everything, time, matter, energy, and space itself, burst forth from this single point. Space began expanding, and it's still expanding to this day. Crazy, right? But what was happening in those first few moments of space? Well, immediately after the Big Bang, the universe was a chaotic soup of particles. Protons, neutrons, and electrons were flying around at crazy speeds. It was hot. Like 10 billion degrees Celsius hot. The universe was a total mess. But over time, tiny fractions of a second, really, things started to cool down just a little. And as the universe cooled, these wild particles began to combine. Hydrogen, the simplest element, was born. And with enough hydrogen clumping together, the first stars started to form. So, space wasn't just some empty canvas waiting for things to happen. It was created along with everything else. As stars formed, they pulled on the gas and dust around them with gravity. These clumps would eventually form galaxies, clusters of galaxies, and even superclusters. But what about the empty parts of space, the voids between galaxies? Are they truly empty? Well, not exactly. Even in the vast stretches between stars and galaxies, there's still a little bit of matter, some stray atoms, particles, dark matter, and even mysterious things like dark energy. Speaking of dark matter and dark energy, we actually don't know much about them yet, but they make up the majority of the universe. Weird, right? Space is full of invisible forces and things we're still trying to figure out. Now, a lot of people think the universe is infinite, but that's not quite right. The universe is expanding, which means space itself is stretching out. So, while it might feel infinite to us, it's actually more like a balloon that keeps getting bigger and bigger. But what lies beyond the edge? We don't know, yet. Here's the mind-bending part: space and time are connected. You've probably heard of Einstein's theory of relativity, right? Well, it tells us that space and time are part of a single thing called spacetime. As massive objects move through spacetime, they warp it, like a bowling ball on a trampoline. So, space wasn't just created in a one-off event. It's constantly being shaped, stretched, and warped by the things inside it, like stars, black holes, and even us. And that brings us back to the big question: how was space created? It was born from the Big Bang, expanded and shaped by gravity, and continues to stretch even now. But in many ways, we're still discovering its mysteries. Every time we look at the stars, we're peering back in time, asking the same questions our ancestors asked. Space is vast, beautiful, and endlessly fascinating. And while we may never know everything about how it was created, the journey to find out is what makes it exciting. If you enjoyed this dive into the origins of space, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. What do you think is the most fascinating part of the universe? Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep looking up.